Unit 7 is based on a humorous monologue from a play by Tom Stoppard. It is somebody reminiscing about James Joyce, the writer James Joyce, whom they allegedly had known in their youth. Now, this passage is very ironic, it's very verbose and full of contradictions. And essentially, the unit is testing our ability to see through all the embellishments, to see through all the exaggerations, all the hyperboles, all the contrasts and so on, all the kind of disorienting detail of this text, to see past it and into the actual message of what this character is saying. Question 33 asks us about Joyce's supposed attitude to money. And once again, we have a play of words here. The juxtaposition of the word primness. Being prim means to be disapproving of something on grounds of impropriety. And we have that combined with the words hard currency, which is a very direct and almost crude way of referring to money. So let's try and make sense of this. Saying Joyce was without primness towards hard currency, does it mean he was more interested in honor than in money? There's no evidence in these lines, and remember that we only are asked to consider this one expression in line 7. Honor is not mentioned here. D is out. C, was he not at all interested in money? So without primness towards hard currency means the opposite. He could be interested in money. He was not too prim, he was not too disapproving of money to be interested in it, at least from time to time. A, was he squeamish about money? For the same reason, we have to discard this, because saying he was without primness means that he was not above it. He did not feel uncomfortable around money. He was without primness. Therefore, B, not squeamish about money, is the closest equivalent of without primness about money, without primness towards hard currency. Question 34 is an excellent example of the sort of contradictions that we are supposed to be able to analyze and see through in this passage. Joyce is described as an essentially private man who wished his total indifference to public notice. So he was very private and he was totally indifferent to public notice, i.e. to being noticed, seen and appreciated by the public. That is what it's saying on the one hand. It then goes on to say that he wanted to be universally known as somebody who was private and totally indifferent to public notice. Now, you cannot at once be indifferent to public notice and wish to be universally known. Those two things are incompatible. So what does it tell us about the kind of person that Joyce was, according to this character? Does it mean they were otherworldly and indifferent to fame? Well, quite the opposite. They wanted to be universally known as being indifferent to fame, which is not the same as being indifferent to fame. Were they affected adversely by publicity? Well, this was either unevidenced, depending on how we look at it, because there isn't anything about the effect of publicity, or false, because publicity is something that they wanted, something that they were after. They wished to be universally known. Suffering from social phobia. Somebody who suffers from social phobia would not want to be universally recognized. So pretentious and attention-seeking is the correct answer, because it strikes at the heart of the hypocrisy that Joyce is being described as exhibiting in this passage. And finally, question 35, the last question of section 1 in this set, asks us about the passage in general and asks us to evaluate the way the character Carr remembers James Joyce. And one of the things that makes this question more complicated than it needs to be is the presence of two attitudes, two terms in each option. So if option A says less formality than pride, I would just consider the one attitude that is being presented as the overwhelming attitude. So does Carr remember Joyce with pride? He does not. Never mind formality, because it says there's less formality. So does he remember him with pride? Well, not at all. Does he remember him with affection? Never mind the envy bit. Is the passage affectionate towards Joyce? Not at all. It is highly critical of Joyce. So B is out as well. Does the passage remember Joyce with constraint? Now, that strikes me as nonsensical above all. I don't know how one can be remembered with constraint. Is Joyce remembered with rancor in this paragraph? Rancor being a synonym for resentment and dislike. Let's take a look. The last sentence describes Joyce as a liar and a hypocrite, a tight-fisted, sponging, fornicating drunk not worth the paper. This is where Carr drops all pretense of humorously praising Joyce and says quite honestly what he thinks. So yes, absolutely, he is remembered with rancor here, and D is therefore our correct answer.